Okay, let's dive into this explainer. When we think about global travel, our minds almost immediately jump to like airplanes, massive resort hotels, maybe beautiful ancient monuments, or just trying out exciting new foods. But powering that massive global travel industry is actually an invisible engine. It's something so seamless, so ubiquitous, that we literally rarely stop to appreciate it when it's working perfectly. So today, we're going to look closely at that engine. We're exploring the absolutely fascinating, highly specialized world of tourism translation and how language acts as the ultimate bridge in our globally connected world.
Now, to really get the language of travel, we first have to understand the traveler themselves. So I want you to ask yourself, who can actually be called a tourist? Seriously, take a second and just think about your answer. Now, if your mind immediately went to someone wearing a loud Hawaiian shirt holding a camera on a sunny beach, well, you are definitely not alone. That's kind of our everyday assumption, right? But as we're about to see, the true definition is actually much, much broader than that.
So, get this. The United Nations World Tourism Organization officially defines a tourist as basically anyone traveling and staying in places outside their usual environment for not more than one consecutive year, for leisure, business, or other purposes. Notice how that completely shatters our sunny beach stereotype? You don't just have to be on vacation. Honestly, whether you're traveling for a corporate seminar, studying abroad for a semester, or just visiting family out of state, as long as you're outside your usual environment for less than a year, boom, you are officially a tourist.
And this brilliantly illustrates why travel fragments into 6 principal types of tourism, because that definition is just so broad. So you've got leisure tourism, which is your typical beach or adventure trip. Then there's business tourism, for conferences and meetings. Cultural tourism, where folks travel specifically for festivals or historical sites. Ecotourism, which is focused entirely on sustainability and nature. Medical tourism, and finally pilgrimage tourism for spiritual reasons. When you zoom out and actually look at all these distinct motivations, you really begin to grasp the sheer macro scale of the travel sector. It is huge.
Let's actually focus on just one of those categories for a second to see how incredibly specialized this gets. The World Health Organization defines medical tourism as travel with the primary goal of improving physical well-being through therapy, diet, and medical services. Now, just imagine the language requirements here for a moment. A traveler in this situation isn't just asking for directions to the nearest bathroom or hailing a cab. They need complex medical therapies, super strict dietary controls, and vital health protocols explained to them flawlessly. The precision required here, it's not just a matter of convenience. It is literally a matter of health and safety.
Okay, so alongside why we travel, we also have to look at the movement of travel itself. On one hand, we have domestic tourism, which is basically people moving around within their own country. On the other hand, there's international tourism, which is people visiting a foreign country. Simple enough, right? But here's the kicker. While domestic travel is obviously massive, the exact moment a traveler crosses a border and becomes an international tourist, the need for clear, accurate, cross-cultural communication just escalates instantly. And that international traveler is going to interact with an entire ecosystem of businesses along the way. Think about it. They're going to need transportation, like airlines and railways. They need accommodation, so hotels and resorts. Obviously, food and beverage options, and ancillary services, things like museums, theme parks, local events. Now, these aren't just isolated businesses operating in a vacuum. They are deeply interconnected pieces that together make tourism one of the absolute largest and fastest growing sectors in the entire global economy.
So the crucial point is something researchers Suleiman and Wilson pointed out, which is that accelerated globalization and advancements in mobility mean increased contact between completely different linguistic tourism markets. Basically, with planes flying faster and further and the global economy opening up like never before, we have an unprecedented number of people crossing into territories where they simply don't speak the language. Globalization is the ultimate catalyst here, and it absolutely demands a bridge to connect all these diverse linguistic markets.
And that bridge is tourism translation. But we need to completely redefine what translation actually means in this context. Because I promise you, it is not merely converting words. I mean, we've all seen those hilarious results of literal dictionary swaps on restaurant menus abroad, right? Nobody really wants to order the confused chicken. True tourism translation involves deep understanding. It's about conveying meanings, emotions, and subtle cultural nuances. It's about capturing the whole feeling of a destination just as much as getting the factual details right. Let's move to and see how this builds into a highly specialized discipline. This field is really anchored by 4 key characteristics. First, it must be audience-centric. Second, it has to demonstrate contextual sensitivity. Third, it needs to balance promotional and informative needs. And fourth, it has to span across diverse formats.
Let's go ahead and unpack these a little bit.
So, being audience-centric means the translator isn't just mindlessly translating into a target language. They are translating for a specific person. They're tailoring the message to the cultural expectations of the tourist or the travel agent. Then there's contextual sensitivity. This is where translators act more like cultural localizers. They have to carefully adapt the content so it respects local customs, cultural references, and sometimes even the specific socio-political context of the target area. It's really fascinating stuff.
And honestly, here is where the translator's job gets incredibly delicate. They practically have to walk a tightrope between promotional content and informative content. On the one hand, they absolutely must use persuasive, engaging marketing language to attract visitors and hype up the beauty of a destination. But on the other hand, they have to guarantee absolute factual accuracy so that a tourist isn't completely misled about a service or location. It's this constant, high-stakes balancing act between marketing flair and strict reality.
Now just think about your own experiences as a tourist for a second. You're probably reading translated brochures down in the hotel lobby, you're navigating localized websites trying to book tickets, maybe deciphering menus at a local cafe, and scrolling through social media content. Well, every single one of these formats has its own unique stylistic requirements that the translator has to get absolutely perfectly right. It's definitely not a one-size-fits-all situation. When you bring all of this together, you realize something pretty incredible. Translation is the absolute bedrock of the tourism industry. It really is that invisible engine we talked about at the very beginning of the explainer. By seamlessly breaking down those language barriers, it connects the transportation, the accommodation, the attractions, basically making global travel an enjoyable reality for millions, rather than a stressful, confusing impossibility.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the benefits of all this work go way, way beyond just keeping tourists from getting hopelessly lost. Good tourism translation directly enhances local economies and actively promotes intercultural understanding. Think about it. A well-translated menu or an engaging museum exhibit allows a tourist to confidently spend their money at a local business, which boosts the economy, all while simultaneously fostering mutual respect and a genuine appreciation for a completely different way of life.
Ultimately, translation doesn't just convey basic information, it builds actual bridges between communities and makes the entire globe accessible to us. So, I want to leave you with this question to ponder. On your next trip, whether it's for business, leisure, or anything in between, what invisible translated text will be secretly guiding your journey? Keep an eye out for it next time you travel. It's the silent machinery making your whole adventure possible. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, happy travels!